Welcome back to Inside the Paint. Please drop your questions, your comments, and Ira, we got a good one from Carlos. He says that Big O has stated that Bam Adebayo's contract is a bad contract. Do you agree?
I disagree. One, you can't equate every dollar to performance. There's not an absolute bar that if you play at this level, you get this amount of money. It's market demand. You couldn't afford to lose Bam. And the equivalency I'm going to give you, Clay, is this. The Phoenix Suns had a similar decision to make with DeAndre Ayton. Great player. Well, actually, very good player. Let me put it that way. Borderline all-star. And they decided, we're not sure if he's a max player, so we're going to let him become a restricted free agent. And because of that, they might lose him because they took that chance. So to me, you have to pay market value because you can't afford to start all over again and look for another Bam Adebayo or look for another DeAndre Ayton. So the contract should have come into it. So whether you're saying Bam is fulfilling his mandate as a max player is another thing. And again, you're building a team. It's not an island. You're not saying we need 5 individual players to always be at their best. Bam fits this team. I don't think there's another team in the NBA he can go to and be the same Bam. But he fits this team for this reason. Because 75% of his value is coming on the defensive end. He's a one-man zone. He makes the Miami Heat defense the number 4 ranked defense this season in the NBA defensive ranking. That's why he's here. Offensive end, yes, he might drive you to distraction. He probably is going to have one of the lowest scoring averages for a max player in the league because that's not his part of the court. But we were speaking to Orlando Alzugaray in our crosstalk when he came to Bam having a great game 3, dynamic 31 points, nothing in game 4. He plays off his teammates. And if Jimmy Butler is struggling and Kyle Lowry can't beat his defender and you're expecting Bam to go 1-on-2 against Robert Williams and Al Horford, that's not going to happen. That's not going to work. And Bam is not going to do it. He's not going to force the ball in there. Now you have certain guys like Shaquille O'Neal, someone like that who's going to go through 2 people, go hard to the rim and get it. It's not who Bam is. That's not his game. That's not his makeup. He can't do that. So I think Bam is playing the right game. It comes down to coaching. It comes down to teammates. This Heat team is 5 men on a string on defense and on offense. And if Max Strus is not making shots and the 3-pointers aren't there and guys aren't slowing the game by getting to the foul line, Bam will look bad. But you know what? Everyone looked bad. Who was the star of the game of game 4? You could tell me Victor Oladipo, because basically when a guy overachieves, we always praise that. But you saw all the stats. The total scoring by the starting lineup, lowest ever since they measured starter scoring when they delineated starters. The fact the starting lineup was outscored by Jason Tatum. The fact that Victor Oladipo outscored the starting lineup. Don't point to that game, Orlando Alzugaray, and saying, this is evidence Bam was bad. Because if you're going to point to that game, I'll point to it and say, this is evidence the Heat are bad. So do you want to make that collective decision and collective judgment on that one game? That, to me, is kind of silly. Bam has had enough good offensive games and enough great defensive games to justify where he stands in the league and on the payroll.
And so I agree with you. I disagree with Big O. There's nothing wrong with the contract. There's nothing wrong with the player. I think you can look around the league, and there's so many max players that aren't nearly as impactful as Bam Adebayo. I went back and I watched that game 4. And the very first possession I thought was telling, Ira. Bam got the ball at the free throw line. He was actually in rhythm. But when you looked in front of him, you had Al Horford guarding him on one side and Rob Williams creeping up on the other in the lane. And so they were building a wall with the 2 of them. It was like they said, all right, early on in this game, we're going to take Bam away. Correct. Now, this is my question. And this is where I think it falls on coaching. Maybe it falls on Kyle Lowry to get in Bam's ear. Because we did see a moment in game 3, by the way, where Jaylen Brown was on Bam, guarding him head up. Right. And Kyle Lowry screamed at Bam, go, go. And Bam charged into his chest and hit a pretty left-handed hook shot. So to me, Ira, there has to be a conversation if you want Bam to take over that game, because this is not the usual game plan. You have to tell him when you've got that 15-footer in rhythm and you see Rob Williams coming up to build the wall, I need you to take that 15-footer. Because in the course of the Heat offense, the way it is usually played, that 15-footer is not the best shot. And what they're coached to do is then move the ball around to try to find a better shot. But in this series, it may be the best shot that you're going to get in that possession. So as to the question, is Bam Adebayo's contract a bad contract? No, Duncan Robinson's contract is a bad contract. And I wouldn't have said that a few weeks ago. It's probably still movable. They'll find a way to do it, whatever. It's a bad contract right now. He's unplayable. With that said, Bam Adebayo gives you so much on the defensive end of the floor. And if you decide that you want to run the offense through him and you tell him, Bam, go, take that shot, I think he'll take it. I just think he's a team player, maybe to a fault, but I also think if people go to him and say, Bam, we need you to take shots that you normally won't take, he'll gladly do it because he'll feel like it's for the good of the team. And to your point, this is to bring it full circle. If Jimmy Butler is indeed so badly hurt that he can't get to the free throw line, he can't have that level of explosiveness, then the offense is going to have to come from somewhere. Whether it's Kyle Lowry all of a sudden coming out of nowhere and hitting threes and scoring like he did in the game in Boston towards the end of the regular season. It's going to have to come from somewhere. Maybe it is Bam, but somebody has to have that conversation with him because it's not in the course of the Heat offense for him to do that.
And Clay, I want to go back to something, and folks, if you missed this, go listen to the podcast of our first segment of the Slomin's Home Security Inside the Paint show. We were talking about free throws. Well, Clay, here's the deal. If the Celtics are shooting 38 free throws, let's assume 4 or 5 of them are and ones. You're talking over 20 possessions when the Celtics are coming off the free throw line and can reset their defense when the Heat are coming down and the Heat are playing in that hard half-court offense. So again, Boston going to the foul line not only is a matter of them getting points, it's also a matter of them setting their defense when they get all those whistles. Well, it's harder for the entire Heat team to play in half court, and it's harder for Bam Adebayo to play in half court. He is one of the best transition big men in the league. He might not have those hard rim runs for dunks, but he gets out there and he leads the break on the wing also. So again, if the Heat are going to get all those foul calls and they're going to stop the game and Boston's going to reset their defense and they're going to throw 3 or 4 back there after the made free throw, that's a difference also. If the Heat are playing off of Celtics free throws, it makes it that much harder to attack that Boston defense. So that's where the whistles come into play also. That's where they come into play for Bam. Bam wants to get out in transition. Kyle wants the throw ahead. Jimmy wants to catch the pitch aheads. So you have to get more of that. But if the game is in the mud and you're letting them shoot all the free throws, you don't get that. And conversely, when the Heat don't shoot free throws, Boston can get off to the races. So there are so many interlocking elements, and that's what you see in a playoff series. Rarely is it one element. So often it's 2, 3, 4 when they come together. That's what we're seeing in this series. This is the typical battle of attrition, number one, but also a battle of constant adjustments. I sort of hate that word as if teams weren't adjusting all year. But like Eric Spoelstra would say, to use his words, this is 10x right now when it comes to adjustments and things like that.
And before we get on to the adjustments, I do want to keep hitting on the Bam Adebayo topic because people are asking questions about this. Two Extremes says, well, if that's Bam's mentality, then that makes him a bad center. That's not what you're looking for. You can't ask someone, you can't just pick and choose who you want them to be. And look, as great as Alonzo Mourning was, he could never defend the perimeter like Bam Adebayo does. Better rim protector. Alonzo Mourning, one of the best rim protectors.
Drop coverage,
in recent NBA memory. Bam Adebayo is a different player. And part of what he does so well on defense is because he loves working within the team concept. He loves the idea of that's him. And just because he doesn't then choose to not be a team player on offense, you can't just pick and choose how you want a guy to work. Now, again, I'll say it. If somebody goes to Bam and says, look, in the team concept now, the way things are in this series, our adjustment has to be, you need to just be the guy. Jimmy can't be the guy right now because he's too hurt. Tyler can't be the guy right now because he's too hurt. Kyle Lowry can't be the guy.
Then you're done anyway. Then you're done anyway. If you're telling me that Jimmy can't be Jimmy and Kyle can't and Kyle can't be Kyle and Tyler can't be, then you're done anyway. Here's the deal. And I want to see who asked that question there. Here's my question for this, and it's this. The same texture would come on after they smash the like button, and they would tell us, why is Bam forcing the ball 1-on-2? Why is Bam forcing the ball 1-on-3? And Clay, you knew this. Zoe, when he first came in the NBA, never passed the ball. There were all these edits of his possessions in Charlotte where it was ridiculous. He'd get the ball, he'd go. He'd get the ball, he'd go. He never passed the damn thing. So there's part 2 of that we would have our people on the chat board here, on our YouTube chat, who would be going, Bam's got to stop forcing the ball. That's not the right shot. You can't have it both ways, folks. There is the right play to make. LeBron, for years, people criticized him with the Heat. When he drew the double and he kicked the ball out for the jumper, someone missed. LeBron should have gone, and Skip Bayless and all these nitwits or whatever would sort of point that way. No, Bam's got to make the right basketball play. And like you said, when Kyle Lowry sees him one-on-one with a slower-footed defender, he has to go. When he sees him with a drop defender who's back in the paint, he has to trust the 15-foot jumper. I agree that. But you still got to make the right basketball play. Because as soon as the other defense gets you making the wrong basketball play, now some players are transcendent. They can succeed making the wrong play. I think LeBron was that. Michael Jordan was that. You have a certain degree of players who can do that. But I don't think you want to wind up in that situation.
Kelly asks, why won't we see two big men playing at the same time like we've seen from Boston? And the simple answer is because you don't have two big men that are versatile like Boston's are. I mean, it's either Dwayne Dedmon for as well as he's played at times this year, he's not Al Horford.
In this series, it really isn't working for him. And he barely started big men at PJ Tucker. So you're saying to me, Clay, what did we mention? 102 games in the season. Why don't you change your style? Folks, think about that. I've gotten so many things. They should start Yurtsevin. You're saying they should start Victor Oladipo. They need a lineup change. Folks, you are 102 games into your season. If you are who you are right now, it's like me and my wife, 26, 27 years into our marriage. This is it right now. We'll spice it up and maybe go to Las Olas on Saturday.
I don't need to hear this.
But you are who you are. Maybe you go to the specialty store, but you are who you are. It's the same thing with the Heat. You're 102 games in. If what you are isn't good enough, you can't be changing it up now. You can't spice things up. Eric Spoelstra can't go in there and light a romantic candle and make it different. This is who you are.
Well, and more than that, Ira, they don't have the personnel. I mean, Omer Yurtsevin is not Al Horford. You can't. The way the Heat play defense, it's part of what makes them great, but it's also predicated on switching everything. You can't have Dwayne Dedmon consistently switched off and guarding Jason Tatum. You can't consistently have Omer Yurtsevin switched off and guarding Jaylen Brown. That's not going to work. So for people who ask the question, that's why. And the flip of that is you can't. This is the problem in the modern NBA with trying to play two big men. You can have a guy who dribbles the ball, dribble around until he gets a bunch of screens and finds the matchup that he wants. You can't just dribble around until Omer Yurtsevin is being guarded by Peyton Pritchard in the post. That's not how it works. And so and by the way, there were a couple times where I think Kyle Lowry was matched up onto Al Horford at one point. So the Heat are okay with that sort of thing, but there's a limit to it when you're talking about playing multiple big men. Okay, adjustments. What can they do, Ira? And this is probably going to stretch into the next segment, so we'll hit it after the break. Based on what you know about the Heat's injury situation, who's in, who's out, what are the adjustments that they can make? Is it a Duncan Robinson break in case of emergency type game? What adjustments that people are asking for can they not make? What do you see and how does this play out?
You adjust to your injury situation. So you can say, well, if Tyler's willing to push through, we're going to play Tyler, 6th Man of the Year award winner. You have to adjust and you have to get an early eye on him, whether it's at today's walkthrough, whether it's his pregame shooting when he's out there with the coaches, whether it's the start of the game. And you can't force him to be what he can't be. And if he has no explosion and he can't get back on defense, you have to pull him. So your adjustment there is that. The adjustment to that adjustment is going with more Victor Oladipo, who looked good. Hell, he made the first shot of the game 7 minutes into the game the other day.
That was insane.
That was crazy. That was crazy.
Insanity.
So at least he was on a little bit, so that's an adjustment. You're going to have to adjust if Jimmy can't have the explosion. Well, when Jimmy was out during the season, you went more with the three-pointer all-or-nothing approach. You might have to do that if anyone could draw and kick or play inside-outside with Bam Adebayo. So I think the adjustments right now are you adjust to your health. You adjust to the ambulatory. But I don't think that means bringing in an Omer Yurtsevin. I don't think that means playing a Markieff Morris. I think that ship has sailed. You don't have a game for that. You can't say, hey, guys, those playbooks we gave you before the Hawks series, before the Sixers series, before this series, I want you to toss them. We got something new, and this is fantastic. You can't. We're at the end of May already. We started this whole mishigas back in October for our Yiddish speakers out there. Like, enough already right now. You've got to be who you are. So I think the adjustments are purely because of injury. You know who you are. I don't expect transparency, even with all the gambling, that if Jimmy has no explosion, there's no reason the Heat on the injury report have to say Jimmy Butler, questionable, no explosion. Tyler Hero, questionable. Can't really move both legs at the same time. I get it, but you will see it. Heat fan, you will see it, especially if you're at FTX Arena tonight and you have a chance to isolate off the ball. See what players are doing off the ball. Because if you feel something is off, whether it's Jimmy with the knee or Tyler with the groin, you will see them far less active when they're on the weak side of the court. And that, to me, is the difference. When Bam Adebayo had his great game on Saturday, he ran, according to the NBA's tracking, 3 miles in that game.
Crazy.
He was active the entire time. When you're hurting, you're not active. So if you're at FTX Arena or you have a good big screen, you can notice stuff off the ball. I think what happens off the ball will give you real insight into what the Heat can do on the ball tonight.
Kelly says, as far as Bam goes and playing 2 bigs, well, yeah, if Bam's guarding around the perimeter, then you can't do that because then you have no rim protector. That's not a thing that's happening in this series. I don't remember more than a couple of instances where the Celtics have been wide open inside. That's not a thing that's not the problem in this series. There are so many other problems, and you can't just pick and choose a couple of possessions that played out a certain way and then throw away all the ones that played out really well defensively. The bottom line for the Heat, and Ira brought this up, if they're not scoring on one end of the floor, and Eric Spoelstra, who never talks about offensive problems ever,
Mm-hmm.
He said after Game 4, our offense let us down because it didn't allow us, and he didn't go this far, but it didn't allow them to get back and set their defense. Too many easy points for Boston. Right. That was the problem in Game 4. That and there was just no energy. Not a matter of Bam not playing. It's not a matter of playing 2 bigs together. There's so many other issues that we've gotten to so far, and we'll get to as the show rolls on. Coming up, last segment. Is there a place at all for Duncan Robinson on this team in this series? That and more coming up next here on Inside the Paint.
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.